What I am about to tell you is not for the faint of heart. Every single thing you think you know about the spiritual world, about the battle for your soul, is about to be shattered. I am Fr. Chad Ripperger, and for over 2 decades I have stood on the front lines of spiritual warfare as an exorcist. I have looked into the eyes of the damned walking on earth. I have heard demons speak in languages that haven't been spoken for thousands of years. I have witnessed things that would make the strongest man collapse in terror. But nothing, and I mean nothing, has shaken me like what I am about to reveal today. We are living in the most spiritually dangerous time in human history. Not because the demons have gotten stronger, they haven't. They are the same creatures they've always been. No, it's because humanity has become completely blind. You walk through your daily life completely unaware that an invisible war is raging around you at every single moment. The darkness isn't coming. It's already here. It's in your homes. It's in your schools. It's in your churches. It's in the very air you breathe. The message I am delivering today is the darkest message I have ever been compelled to share. Not because I want to frighten you, but because the truth itself is frightening. And if you are not frightened by what is happening in the spiritual realm right now, then you are already in grave danger. The demons do not fear you. They fear only one thing, and that is the power of Christ. But most people have forgotten that. Most people have abandoned the very weapons that could save them. This is a 6-part revelation. Each part will go deeper into the darkness than the last. By the end, you will never see the world the same way again. You have been warned. Now we begin. Let me be absolutely clear about something from the very beginning. Spiritual warfare is not a metaphor. It is not a symbolic way of talking about your personal struggles. It is not a psychological framework for understanding temptation. Spiritual warfare is a literal, actual, ongoing battle between spiritual beings, both good and evil. And you are caught in the middle of it, whether you like it or not. Most people today live as if the spiritual world doesn't exist. They go about their daily routines, waking up, going to work, eating dinner, watching television, going to sleep, completely oblivious to the reality that surrounds them at every moment. They are like a man walking through a battlefield with noise-canceling headphones on, convinced that because he cannot hear the gunfire, there must not be a war. But there is a war, and it is raging right now. The demons are real. They are not symbols. They are not personifications of evil impulses. They are actual individual, intelligent spiritual beings who have will, intellect, and a malevolent purpose. They were created good as angels, but they chose to turn away from God through pride. That choice was definitive and irrevocable. They cannot repent. They cannot change. They cannot be redeemed. They are fixed in their hatred of God and in their hatred of you because you are made in God's image. Do you understand what that means? Every single human being carries within them the image of God. And every time a demon looks at you, they see that image, and it enrages them. They hate you not because of anything you have personally done, but because of what you are. You are a living reminder of the God they rejected. You are walking proof that their rebellion was futile because God simply created new beings, human beings, to fill the place in creation that the fallen angels abandoned. This is why the demons are relentless. This is why they never stop. They cannot hurt God directly. He is omnipotent, untouchable by creatures. But they can hurt what he loves. They can corrupt what he created. They can drag souls into the same misery they have chosen for themselves. And that is exactly what they are doing every single day on a scale that would terrify you if you could see it. Now, here is what makes our current situation so extraordinarily dangerous. In previous centuries, people understood this reality. Even if they weren't perfect Christians, Even if they fell into sin repeatedly, they at least knew that the spiritual world was real. They believed in the existence of demons. They believed in the power of prayer. They believed that the sacraments were channels of actual grace. This basic awareness provided a kind of baseline spiritual immunity. The demons could still attack, but they were operating against a population that was at least somewhat prepared. That is no longer the case. We now live in a civilization that has, by and large, completely denied the existence of the spiritual world. The materialist worldview, the idea that only physical matter exists and that everything can be explained by natural causes, has become the default operating system of modern humanity. And from the demons' perspective, this is the greatest possible advantage they could ever ask for. Think about it. If you are a general commanding an army, what is your ideal scenario? It is that the enemy does not even know a war is happening. If your opponent doesn't believe you exist, they won't prepare any defenses. They won't deploy any countermeasures. They won't even recognize your attacks as attacks. They will attribute every wound you inflict to something else. Bad luck, psychological problems, social conditions, chemical imbalances. They will explain away every single victory you achieve using naturalistic categories that leave you completely invisible. This is precisely where we are today. The demons are operating with almost total impunity because the vast majority of people, including, tragically, many clergy, do not believe they exist. And a threat you don't believe in is a threat you cannot defend against. I have seen the consequences of this firsthand in my work as an exorcist. The number of possessions, oppressions, and infestations has skyrocketed in recent decades. The cases are more severe, the demons are more aggressive. The entry points through occult practices, New Age spirituality, drug use, pornography, and the breakdown of the family have multiplied exponentially. And the church's response has been in many places woefully inadequate. We have priests who don't believe in the devil. We have bishops who treat exorcism as an embarrassing relic of the past. We have Catholic universities teaching that demonic possession is really just mental illness. The very institution that Christ established to be the primary instrument of spiritual warfare has in many quarters disarmed itself. Do you see the catastrophe? The one organization on earth that has the authority and the power to combat the demonic realm has largely abandoned the field, and the demons have rushed in to fill the vacuum. But let me tell you something even more disturbing. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was not convincing the world he doesn't exist. That's a famous line, and it contains truth, but it doesn't go far enough. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that sin doesn't exist. Because once you eliminate the concept of sin, you eliminate the concept of salvation. Once you eliminate salvation, you eliminate the need for a savior. And once you eliminate the need for a savior, the demons have won the war for your soul without firing a single shot. This is where we are. We are living in a post-sin civilization. People still do terrible things, of course, but they no longer recognize those things as sins. They are mistakes. They are lifestyle choices. They are expressions of personal freedom. The very vocabulary of moral responsibility has been systematically dismantled. And with it, the last vestiges of spiritual awareness have crumbled. You need to understand something. The spiritual world is not somewhere far away. It is right here. It is overlapping with the physical world at every point. The demons are not confined to some distant hell. They operate in this world, in your world right now. St. Paul told us this explicitly. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against the powers, against the world rulers of this present darkness, against the spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. That is not poetry. That is not mythology. That is a statement of fact from an apostle who had direct experience of the spiritual realm. And if you ignore it, you do so at your eternal peril. The war is real. You are in it. And the first step to surviving any war is acknowledging that it exists. Now that you understand the reality of the spiritual war, you need to understand something even more critical: how the enemy gains access to you. Demons are not omnipresent. They cannot be everywhere at once. They are creatures, limited by their nature. They cannot simply enter your life at will. There are laws, spiritual laws established by God, that govern the interaction between the spiritual and physical realms. One of those laws is that demons must have an entry point. They need permission, not your conscious permission necessarily, but they need a door to be opened. And I'm about to tell you about the 8 doors that people open most frequently, often without even realizing it. Entry point number 1, the occult. This is the most direct and dangerous entry point. Any practice that involves seeking hidden knowledge or power from spiritual sources other than God is occult. This includes tarot cards, Ouija boards, seances, astrology, crystal healing, energy work, Reiki, chakra alignment, psychic readings, mediumship, and 100 other practices that have become wildly popular in recent years. When you engage in these practices, you are essentially walking into the demonic realm and saying, I want what you're offering. And the demons are happy to oblige. They will give you exactly the experience you're looking for: a sense of insight, a feeling of peace, a dramatic revelation, because they know that once you accept their gifts, you have established a connection with them. And that connection gives them rights over you. I have dealt with countless cases of demonic oppression that began with harmless occult experimentation. A teenager plays with a Ouija board at a sleepover. A woman goes to a psychic for fun. A man gets interested in Eastern meditation techniques that involve opening yourself to spiritual energies. These are not harmless. Every single one of them opens a door. And once that door is open, it is extraordinarily difficult to close. Entry point number 2, mortal sin. This is perhaps the most common entry point of all. When you commit a mortal sin, a grave violation of God's law done with full knowledge and deliberate consent, you separate yourself from God's grace. You step outside the protective boundary of His will. And in that state of separation, you become vulnerable to demonic influence in a way that you were not before. The sin itself creates a spiritual wound, and the demons are drawn to that wound like sharks to blood. This is not metaphorical. This is theological reality. Mortal sin strips away the shield of sanctifying grace. It doesn't mean you are possessed the moment you commit a mortal sin, but it means the demons now have a legal claim on you that they did not have before, and they will exploit that claim relentlessly. Entry point number 3, unforgiveness. This is one that catches people off guard. But the spiritual reality is clear. Unforgiveness is a form of bondage that ties you to the demonic realm. When you refuse to forgive someone, you are holding on to resentment, anger, and the desire for vengeance. These are all disordered passions that the demons can attach themselves to. Jesus was not speaking metaphorically when he said that if you do not forgive others, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Unforgiveness is a spiritual poison, and it creates an environment in which demons thrive. I have seen cases where people were experiencing severe demonic oppression, and the root cause was not occult involvement or some dramatic sin. It was simply that they had harbored unforgiveness in their hearts for years, sometimes decades. The moment they truly forgave, not just verbally, but from the depths of their soul, the oppression lifted. Entry point number 4, trauma and abuse. When someone suffers severe trauma, particularly abuse, the spiritual wounds are often deeper than the psychological ones. Trauma shatters the soul's natural defenses. It creates fissures and fractures that the demons can exploit. This is not blame the victim. This is simply an acknowledgement of spiritual reality. The demons are opportunists. They attack where the defenses are weakest. And a person who has been traumatized has defenses that have been compromised through no fault of their own. This is why healing from trauma requires not just psychological care, but spiritual care as well. Entry point number 5, pornography and sexual sin. The sexual act is profoundly spiritual. It is designed by God to be a total gift of self within the covenant of marriage. When it is distorted through pornography, fornication, adultery, homosexual acts, or any other sexual sin, it creates powerful spiritual disruptions. Pornography in particular is devastating because it is so accessible, so addictive, and so thoroughly dehumanizing. Every time you consume pornography, you are opening yourself to the demonic realm through the sin of lust. And you are also participating in an industry that is itself saturated with demonic influence. The demons associated with lust are among the most aggressive and tenacious I have encountered in my ministry. They do not let go easily. And the entry point they use, the sexual appetite, is one of the most powerful drives in human nature, which makes it incredibly difficult to close once it has been opened. Entry point number 6, drugs and altered states of consciousness. This is straightforward. Drugs that alter your state of consciousness lower your spiritual defenses. They suppress your reason and your will, the two faculties that make you most like God and most unlike the animals. When your reason and will are suppressed, you are in a state of maximum vulnerability. The demons can influence you in ways they could not when you are in full possession of your faculties. This is why drug-induced experiences so often involve encounters with dark entities. It's not hallucination, it's actual spiritual contact. Entry point number 7. Curses and hexes. Yes, they are real. Yes, they work. Not because the demons have independent power, but because a curse or hex is a deliberate invocation of demonic power against a specific person. When someone curses you, and this happens more often than you might think, they are essentially commissioning a demon to attack you. The demon is not obligated to comply. They are not God's servants. But they often will, because causing harm is what they do. The effectiveness of a curse depends on many factors, including the spiritual state of the person cursed. But the curse itself creates a spiritual reality that must be dealt with. Entry point number 8, generational spiritual bondages. This is perhaps the most hidden and insidious entry point. Sins and occult practices committed by your ancestors can create spiritual bondages that are passed down through family lines. The Bible itself acknowledges this. God visits the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the 3rd and 4th generation. This is not God punishing children for their parents' sins. It is a description of how spiritual bondage works. When an ancestor opens a door to the demonic realm, that door can remain open for subsequent generations until someone deliberately closes it through prayer, repentance, and the sacraments. I have seen families plagued by the same patterns of sin, addiction, and oppression for generations, not because of genetics, but because of generational spiritual bondage. Once the root cause is identified and addressed spiritually, the pattern can be broken. These 8 entry points account for the vast majority of demonic influence I have encountered in my ministry. Every single one of them involves a violation of God's order in some way. And every single one of them can be closed through repentance, the sacraments, and deliberate spiritual warfare. But you cannot close a door if you don't know it's open. That's why this knowledge is essential. One of the most alarming aspects of the demonic realm, and one that most people are completely ignorant of, is that hell has a hierarchy. The demons are not a disorganized mob of chaotic spirits running around doing whatever they please. They are organized. They are structured. They have a chain of command. Their organization is terrifyingly efficient. Since Thomas Aquinas, drawing on Scripture and the Church Fathers, taught that the angels, both good and fallen, are organized into 9 choirs. Seraphim, cherubim, thrones, dominions, virtues, powers, principalities, archangels, and angels. When the angels fell, they did not lose their nature or their intelligence. They retained their hierarchical structure. This means that the demonic realm is organized along the same lines as the angelic realm, but twisted, corrupted, and directed toward malevolent ends. The lower demons, the ones at the bottom of the hierarchy, are the ones most commonly encountered in cases of oppression and possession. They are the foot soldiers, the grunts. They are relatively limited in power and intelligence compared to the higher-ranking demons, but they are still far more intelligent than any human being. Let that sink in. The stupidest demon is smarter than the brightest human. That is not an exaggeration. That is theological fact. Demons are angelic creatures. They possess an intellect that operates at a speed and depth that human minds cannot match. But the lower demons are not the real threat. They are merely the ones who carry out the grunt work. The real threat comes from the higher-ranking demons, the principalities and powers that St. Paul warned us about. These are the strategists, the architects of evil, the ones who devise plans that span centuries. Do you understand what that means? A high-ranking demon has been alive since before the creation of the material universe. They have had thousands of years to observe human nature. They know every weakness, every vulnerability, every pattern of thought and behavior. They understand psychology better than any psychologist. They understand sociology better than any sociologist. They understand you better than you understand yourself. And they are patient. They do not operate on human timescales. A single high-ranking demon can implement a plan that takes 300 years to come to fruition. They will set events in motion that will not bear fruit for generations. They will subtly influence cultures, institutions, and ideologies over centuries, slowly steering humanity away from God and toward destruction. Now, consider this. The principalities and powers that St. Paul describes are not individual demons working alone. They are classes of demons, each with authority over a specific domain. Some have authority over nations. Some have authority over institutions. Some have authority over specific sins. And they coordinate their activities with a precision that would make any military commander weep with envy. This is the reality that most people simply cannot comprehend. When you look at the cultural collapse of the West, the abandonment of faith, the normalization of perversion, the destruction of the family, the rise of suicide and despair, you are not looking at random social trends. You are looking at the coordinated work of intelligent, malevolent spiritual beings who have been working toward this outcome for centuries. Let me give you a specific example. In 1917, at Fatima, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to 3 children in Portugal. She told them that Russia would spread her errors throughout the world. At the time, Russia was still under the Tsar. The Bolshevik Revolution hadn't happened yet. But within months, the communists seized power. And over the next several decades, they did exactly what Our Lady predicted. They spread atheistic materialism, class warfare, sexual revolution, and the systematic destruction of Christian civilization across the globe. Now, from a purely natural perspective, you could explain this as geopolitics. But from a spiritual perspective, the picture is far more disturbing. The communist ideology did not emerge from nowhere. It was inspired, and I use that word deliberately, by the demonic realm. The principalities assigned to the nations of the West spent centuries preparing the ground, undermining the authority of the church, promoting skepticism and rationalism, eroding the moral fabric of society. When the conditions were right, they introduced a comprehensive system of thought, Marxism, that denied the existence of the spiritual world entirely, that reduced human beings to economic units, and that justified any atrocity in the name of historical progress. And it worked brilliantly. But here is what should really frighten you. The communists were the obvious attack, the one you could see. While the world was focused on the threat of Soviet expansion, the principalities of the West were executing a far more subtle and far more devastating strategy, one that did not involve armies or revolutions, but that targeted the soul of Western civilization directly. They attacked the family. They attacked the sacraments. They attacked the very concept of truth. They infiltrated the universities, the media, and yes, the church itself. They normalized contraception, divorce, abortion, and eventually the redefinition of marriage and gender. And they did it so gradually, so incrementally, that most people didn't even notice it was happening until it was already done. This is how the principalities work. They are strategic, patient, and devastatingly effective. And they are not finished. I believe, and I am not alone in this, that the next phase of their strategy is already underway. It involves the complete merger of humanity with technology, transhumanism, artificial intelligence, the digitization of consciousness. These are not merely technological developments. They are the next stage of the demonic plan to separate humanity from God at the most fundamental level. If they can convince you that you are not a spiritual being, that you are merely a biological machine that can be upgraded, modified, and ultimately replaced by technology, then they have won the war for your soul. Because a being that does not believe it has a soul will not take any steps to save it. The hierarchy of hell is real. The principalities are real, and they are working right now with a level of coordination and intelligence that should make every person on this planet fall to their knees in prayer. In all my years of ministry, I have encountered one sin more than any other that serves as the primary gateway for demonic influence in the modern world. It is not what you think. It is not murder. It is not theft. It is not even the sexual sins, although those are rampant and devastating. The most dangerous sin of our time, the sin that has opened more doors to the demonic realm than any other, is acedia. Acedia is often translated as sloth, but that translation is woefully inadequate. Sloth suggests laziness, someone who doesn't want to get off the couch. But acedia is far deeper and far more sinister than that. Acedia is the spiritual torpor that makes you indifferent to your own salvation. It is the refusal to engage with the spiritual life. It is the surrender of the will to apathy. Acedia is the sin that says, I don't care. I don't care about God. I don't care about my soul. I don't care about the sacraments. I don't care about truth. I don't care about anything that truly matters. I will simply exist, consume, work, sleep, repeat until I die, and I will never once ask the question of why I am here or what I am meant for. Does that sound familiar? It should. Because acedia is the defining spiritual condition of modern humanity. We have created an entire civilization designed to facilitate acedia. We have endless entertainment to distract us from the emptiness. We have pharmaceutical solutions for the despair that inevitably accompanies spiritual indifference. We have a culture that actively discourages serious thought about ultimate questions. You do you. Live your truth as long as you're happy. These are all slogans of acedia, dressed up as liberation. The demons love acedia. They thrive on it. Why? Because acedia renders you passive. And a passive spiritual combatant is a defeated spiritual combatant. You cannot win a war if you don't even show up to fight. And acedia ensures that you never show up. But here is what makes acedia truly diabolical. It is the one sin that disguises itself as something other than sin. Lust knows it is lust. Greed knows it is greed. Pride knows it is pride, even if it refuses to admit it. But acedia doesn't even recognize itself. It masks itself as tiredness, as practicality, as realism, as mental health. I'm just taking care of myself. I'm setting boundaries. I don't have time for spiritual things right now. All of these may be legitimate in specific contexts, but they are also the language of acedia when it has taken root in the soul. The Desert Fathers, the early Christian monks who lived in the Egyptian desert in the 3rd and 4th centuries, wrote extensively about acedia, or they called it the noonday demon, because it typically struck in the middle of the day when the initial enthusiasm of the morning had faded, and the rest of the day stretched out ahead like an endless wasteland. The monk would look at his cell, at his prayer rule, at his simple labor, and feel an overwhelming sense of pointlessness. Why am I doing this? What does it matter? I should just leave. The Desert Fathers understood that this feeling was not natural. It was a spiritual attack, a direct assault from the demonic realm designed to separate the monk from his purpose and ultimately from God. And they developed strategies to combat it. Perseverance in prayer, manual labor, the recitation of the Psalms, and above all, staying in the cell. Stay in your cell, they would say, and your cell will teach you everything. The cell, of course, was not just a physical room. It was a metaphor for the spiritual life itself. Stay in the fight. Don't run away. Don't give in to the temptation to abandon the spiritual journey simply because it has become difficult or seems pointless. Now, translate that to the modern world. Most people have not just left the cell, they don't even know the cell exists. They have no prayer life, no sacramental life, no spiritual discipline of any kind. They are spiritual vagrants, wandering aimlessly through a battlefield with no armor and no weapons. And the demons are picking them off one by one. The rise of depression, anxiety, and suicide in the modern world is not primarily a mental health crisis. It is a spiritual crisis. I am not denying that there are biological and psychological components to mental illness. Of course there are. But the sheer scale of the despair we are witnessing cannot be explained by biology and psychology alone. When an entire civilization loses its sense of meaning, when millions of people feel that their lives are pointless, when the suicide rate climbs year after year, something spiritual is happening, and that something is acedia. The noonday demon has not gone away. He has simply expanded his territory from the desert to the entire world. The antidote to acedia is purpose, specifically the purpose for which God created you. You are not here by accident. You are not a random collection of molecules. You are a unique, unrepeatable person created by a loving God for a specific mission that no one else can fulfill. And the demons will do everything in their power to prevent you from discovering that mission, because a person who knows their purpose is a person who cannot be defeated by apathy. This is why the spiritual disciplines, prayer, fasting, almsgiving, the sacraments, are not optional accessories for the spiritually ambitious. They are survival tools. They are the means by which you resist acedia and stay in the fight. Without them, you will drift. And drifting in a spiritual war is not neutral. It is movement toward the enemy. I need to tell you some things that I have witnessed directly in my ministry. I do not share these stories lightly. I share them because you need to understand in concrete, visceral terms the reality of what we are dealing with. In one case, I was called to a home where a family was experiencing severe infestation. Objects were moving on their own. Terrifying sounds were coming from the walls. The family, who were not particularly religious, were at their wits' end. When I arrived and began the prayers of deliverance, the atmosphere in the house changed immediately. The temperature dropped. The air became thick and oppressive. And then the voice came. It was not a human voice. I want to be very clear about that. It did not sound like any human voice I have ever heard. It was guttural, unnatural, and filled with a malice that I cannot adequately describe. It spoke in Latin, not the Latin of the church, but a corrupted, inverted version of it, as if the language itself had been defiled. And the things it said, the specific, detailed knowledge it displayed about the people in that room, was beyond any natural explanation. The demon knew things about these people that no human being could have known. Private sins they had never confessed. Events from their past they had never shared with anyone. Their deepest fears and insecurities. And it wielded this knowledge like a weapon, taunting them, demoralizing them, trying to break their will to resist. This is what demons do. They are not merely malevolent, they are strategically malevolent. They use information as a weapon. They probe for weaknesses and exploit them mercilessly. In another case, I was involved in the exorcism of a young woman who had become possessed through extensive involvement in New Age practices. She had started with yoga and meditation, progressed to Reiki and energy healing, eventually began channeling spirits. By the time she came to me, she was in a state of full possession. Her personality had been almost entirely suppressed. Her voice had changed. Her features had changed. There was something about her face that was simply wrong, as if another intelligence was looking out through her eyes. During the exorcism, the demon spoke through her mouth, revealed its name only after prolonged spiritual combat, and it made it very clear that it had no intention of leaving. She invited me in, it said. She gave me permission. I have a right to be here. This is the legal language of the demonic realm. They operate according to a twisted version of justice. They believe, and in a certain sense, they are correct, that when a human being opens a door to them through sin or occult practice, they have acquired a right to be there. And they will fight to defend that right with every resource at their disposal. The exorcism took months. It was brutal, spiritually, emotionally, and physically exhausting. But eventually, through the power of Christ and the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the demon was cast out. The moment it left, the change in the woman was instantaneous and dramatic. She collapsed in tears of relief and gratitude. Her face returned to normal. Her voice was her own again. She was free. But here is what haunts me about that case, and about every case I have worked. The demon did not leave because I was powerful. I am not powerful. I am a weak, sinful man. The demon left because Christ is powerful. And the only authority that can compel a demon to leave is the authority of Jesus Christ, exercised through his church. This is why the erosion of faith in the church is not just a religious problem. It is a survival problem. The church possesses the weapons needed to fight the demonic realm. The sacraments, especially the Eucharist and confession, are not symbols. They are channels of actual divine power. The sacramentals, holy water, blessed salt, the Saint Benedict medal, the scapular, are not superstitions. They are genuine spiritual protections that have been proven effective over centuries of use. And the prayers of deliverance and exorcism are not medieval theater. They are efficacious spiritual weapons that actually compel the demons to respond. When the church abandons these weapons, when she stops believing in their efficacy, when she replaces spiritual warfare with psychological counseling and social programs, the demons rejoice, because they know that without these weapons, humanity is defenseless against them. I have seen things that would make your blood run cold. I have heard things that I cannot unhear. I have witnessed the reality of evil in a way that most people, thankfully, never will. And the one message I need you to take from this is simple. The demons are real. They are dangerous. And the only thing standing between you and them is the grace of God, mediated through the church and the sacraments. Do not take that grace for granted. Do not assume it will always be available. Do not wait until you are in crisis to seek it out. Build your spiritual defenses now while you still can. We have arrived at the final part of this message, and it is here that I must be most direct. Everything I have shared with you up to this point, the reality of spiritual warfare, the entry points, the demon's exploit, the hierarchy of hell, the sin of acedia, the evidence from my ministry, all of it has been building to this moment. Because knowledge without action is useless. In fact, it is worse than useless. It is dangerous. To whom much is given, much will be required. You have been given knowledge of the spiritual war. What you do with that knowledge will determine the fate of your soul. Here is what you must do. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. First, return to the sacraments. If you are a baptized Catholic, you have access to the most powerful spiritual weapons on earth. The Eucharist is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. When you receive it worthily, you are receiving the very power of God into your body and soul. There is no greater protection against the demonic realm. Confession is the sacrament that closes the doors opened by sin. Every mortal sin you have committed has given the demons a claim on you. Confession breaks that claim. It restores sanctifying grace. It fortifies your spiritual defenses. Go to confession. Go frequently. And then receive the Eucharist worthily in a state of grace as often as you can. Second, establish a daily prayer rule. You cannot survive the spiritual war without a consistent, disciplined prayer life. I recommend the following minimum: morning offering, evening examination of conscience, daily rosary, and at least 15 minutes of mental prayer. The rosary is particularly important. It is, as Pope St. Pius X called it, the scourge of the devil. Every time you pray the rosary, you are invoking the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and the demons are terrified of her. They fear her more than they fear all the angels combined, because she is the woman whose seed crushed the head of the serpent. She is their conqueror, and they know it. Tiered. Use sacramentals. Holy water, blessed salt, the St. Benedict medal, the brown scapular, the miraculous medal. These are all genuine spiritual protections. Keep holy water in your home. Use it. Bless your home with it regularly. Sprinkle blessed salt around the perimeter of your property. Wear the scapular and the St. Benedict medal. These are not magic charms. They are channels of grace that the Church has given us for our protection. Use them. Firth, close the doors. If you have been involved in any of the entry points I described in Part 2, you need to renounce that involvement formally and completely. Destroy any occult objects in your home. Tarot cards, crystals, New Age books, anything associated with demonic practices. Renounce any curses or hexes that have been placed on you or your family line. If you have committed mortal sins, confess them. If you are holding unforgiveness, let it go. Not for the sake of the person who wronged you, but for your own sake. Every open door is a vulnerability. Close them all. Fifth, fast. Fasting is one of the most powerful spiritual weapons available to you, and it is almost completely neglected in the modern church. Jesus himself said that certain demons can only be expelled through prayer and fasting. Fasting weakens the flesh and strengthens the spirit. It demonstrates to God that you are serious about the spiritual life. It deprives the demons of the sensual comfort they use to maintain their hold on you. Fast regularly, at minimum, on the days prescribed by the Church, but ideally more frequently, mystic or consecrate yourself to the Blessed Virgin Mary. There is no safer place in the spiritual war than under the mantle of the Mother of God. Consecrate yourself to her using the method of St. Louis de Montfort. Give her everything, your prayers, your works, your joys, your sufferings, your entire life. She will protect you. She will intercede for you. She will form you into the image of her Son, and the demons will not be able to touch you.